friends, this is Angelus de Mortiel with my first multiplayer build guide for Mass Effect Andromeda. And what better way to transition my build guides from Dragon Age to Mass Effect than making a build that draws on inspiration from both. Enter the Asari Blood Mage. The concept here is simple. The Blood Mage was a specialization from Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2 that used health to cast spells instead of mana, often with devastating amounts of damage. To offset this, typically other spells like Drain Life or Grave Robber were used to help replenish health. That concept is the focus of this build. A high risk, high reward glass cannon. Short little disclaimer, I currently only have this kit at rank 6 level 20, meaning I do not have all of the skill points available to me. The build I present here will be for rank 10 level 20 however, with recommendations on order of progression. Starting off, we have Throw, a classic Mass Effect biotic power. Throw is a homing biotic projectile that hits an enemy with significant force, knocking weaker enemies flying and detonating combos. We actually completely skip upgrades into Throw, as part of this build concept is to be able to rapidly dispatch enemies at close quarters. This makes Throw less ideal as we need enemies to die close to us. We'll come to that in the strategy section. After that, we move on to Annihilation. Annihilation is a toggleable AoE biotic field centered on the caster that deals 55 damage per second to enemies within 3.5 meters and primes them for biotic combos at the cost of significantly increasing power cooldowns. Fans of the N7 Fury and Asari Valkyrie from Mass Effect 3 multiplayer will be familiar with this power, albeit it's changed a little. With Annihilation at rank 4, we take the Radius upgrade to dramatically increase the area in which we can affect enemies. This choice will become more clear as the build develops. At rank 5, we take the Damage Attractor for a debuff on enemies, causing them to take 20% more damage when enemies are in the Annihilation field. At rank 6, we take Draining Field, turning Annihilation into Grave Robber from Dragon Age 2. Any enemy that dies within the AoE of Annihilation restores 30% shields to all allies within 8 meters, including the caster. Next, we have a new addition to the biotic portfolio, Lance. Lance is a biotic javelin that hits enemies at nearly any range for 320 damage and 400 newtons of force, while also detonating combos. Lance is a skill shot, meaning it does not home in on targets like Throw, so aim carefully. At rank 4, we take Damage and Force upgrade to increase both a respectable 20%. At rank 5, we take Focused Blast to increase the damage of headshot and weak point hits by 25%. This acts as a damage multiplier, so it rewards good aim. At rank 6, we take Shield Power, morphing Lance into a sort of phase disruptor. Casting Lance no longer has a cooldown, but instead costs half your shields. This means you have to pick your uses of Lance more carefully, but now it means you no longer have to worry about cooldowns. Next, we get into passive upgrades. In offensive biotics, we take Power Enhancement to increase damage by 10% and force by 20% of all powers. This is an easy choice since the alternative is shorter cooldowns, something about which we really need not worry. Then we take Combo Detonations, which increases the damage and radius of combos by 30%. We'll be seeing them a lot, so we should really make the most of them. Finally, we take Biotic Warrior to give us a substantial bonus to melee attacks, granting a 50% melee damage bonus and a 15% force bonus for 3 seconds after an enemy is hit by a power. In Barrier, we take Recuperative Barrier to reduce shield and health regeneration delay and increase shield recharge speeds all by 30%. Then an important upgrade, Barrier Drain. Not only does this increase melee damage by a massive 50%, but it also causes all melee attacks to restore 20% of your shields. Finally, active barrier. Whenever you kill an enemy with a biotic power, you and any allies within 6 meters have 10% barrier restored. A quick note on build order. Rank versus level. As a portion of the maximum skill points for a class is locked behind RNG in Andromeda multiplayer and not just your character level, I'll also include a build priority for skills. In this video, this is in its own section here because I wanted to explain why it was here. But in future builds, this will be incorporated into the section about the skills themselves. The priority is as follows. Number 1, max out Annihilation Power Tree. Number 2, max out Barrier Passive Tree. Number 3, max out the Lance Power Tree. Number 4, max out Offensive Biotics Passive Tree. As with all future builds in Andromeda, sub-level 20 kits will have an exponential reliance on weapons the lower the level. Higher rank of a kit mitigates this somewhat, but you will definitely want to find a good weapon to rely on. The Charger SMG is a solid recommendation early on, as it's effective even in silver and it's easy to get up to max rank. As for my loadout, recharge time is not a factor, so you can take nearly any gun. That said, I recommend close quarters weapons as you will be in enemies' faces a lot. I prefer to take my Disciple with a melee optimizer, if that wasn't obvious, and a smart choke for better accuracy. However, the essential part of the loadout is the equipment. You want the Juggernaut shield. This increases your shields by a small 10%, but increases your melee damage by a tremendous 75%. At the time of this video being published, the Juggernaut shield is available to craft in the item store for 120 mission funds, but only for the next couple of weeks. Start playing those Apex missions to gain mission funds. For boosters, strength enhancers to keep increasing your melee damage, along with biotic amps to increase the damage of Lance are great choices. Alternatively, you can add a cyclonic mod to increase your durability, or a weapon mod to increase the damage of your equipped weapon. Now for the strategy. The first key to this strategy is understanding that it's a hyper-aggressive build. You need to be constantly pushing forward and getting in your enemies' faces. The reasoning is multifaceted. 1, being up close means that you can melee enemies to keep your shields up and deal the most damage. 2, being up close means that enemies are primed for combos and debuffed by your Annihilation field. 3, being up close means it's harder, but not impossible, for you to miss critical lance throws. Now, how I handle engagements against most enemies is pretty simple. Rush in at the enemy as quickly as possible, making sure to use dodging and cover whenever possible to reduce time vulnerable to ranged fire. Once an enemy is within range of Annihilation, hit it with Lance to detonate a biotic combo. If the enemy survives, finish it with melee attacks. Usually 1 or 2 will do, even on gold difficulty. If the enemy is knocked flying by a biotic combo, jump after it to finish it with an air melee attack. It's more efficient, and it makes you look like a badass. However, there are other enemies that you will want to handle with more care, notably boss enemies with sync kills. After all the other enemies are dead, rush in close just like before. Once in range of Annihilation, lance as before, hitting weak points if possible. Circle around the boss using cover and dodging whenever possible to avoid powerful attacks. Note, never stop moving for more than a couple of seconds, especially against the Ascendant. Melee if the boss is vulnerable and not looking at you. Lance it again after about 10 seconds once the boss has been re-primed for a combo. Repeat this process over and over again until the boss is dead. The Asari Blood Mage feels like a reflection of Mass Effect Andromeda metaphorically. Fast-paced and frantic, every moment with her in adrenaline-fueled combat leads to some spectacularly badass kills and some gloriously epic fails. Have a different way to build the Asari Adept? Let me know in the comments below. If you're new to this channel, hello, I make build guides, strategies, and tutorials, as well as live stream frequently. If you like what you saw here and would like to be notified of the next build guide, click that subscribe button. You can also follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. I also run a multi-genre gaming community called the Pixel Crashers, as well as co-lead the Apex Spec Ops community. You can find links for all of these things in the description down below. Until next time, this is Angelus de Mortiel, signing off.